welcome to the Big Séance podcast. I'm Patrick Keller of BigSeance.com, and this is a place for an open discussion on all things paranormal, but specifically topics like ghosts and hauntings, paranormal research, spirit communication, psychics and mediums, and life after death. So basically, anything that pops up in my paranormal world. The candles are already lit, so you might as well come on in and join the Séance. Welcome to the Big Séance podcast. If you listened to my very first episode from last week and you're back, then I want to thank you for tuning in once again. If you're a new listener, then welcome. And really, I plan on sharing some of the wonderful feedback that I've received a little later on in the show, but I have to tell you, I never dreamed I'd get as many downloads as I got for just the one episode. And as of this recording, we're not even on iTunes yet, but we will be next week. But it's very, very exciting. Well, enough about me. Today, I am so honored and excited to have Mary Homick on the show. She has been such an inspiration to me, and let me share her bio with you before we have a little chat with her. Mary Homick is a cemetery photographer and infrared photography artist. And an infrared photography artist. She is the creator of and photographer for Historic Cemeteries on Facebook, a portfolio of her primary work and passion, cemetery photography. Although she enjoys many subjects, photography has been a lifelong passion, and her work has been seen all over the world through digital mediums. She was the first placed winner in the 2013 Cemeteryscape International Photo Competition in New Orleans, sponsored by the Arts Council of New Orleans and Save Our Cemeteries. She strives to promote education and preservation of historic cemeteries with her photography. She published her first book, Historic Cemeteries, in January 2014. Hello, Mary.
Hello.
I have to tell you, as a new photographer who has spent many hours in cemeteries taking photos, some not very good, I have to tell you that you have been a major source, and I know I've told you this before, of inspiration for me. I knew I loved cemeteries and taking photos of them, but I'm not sure I knew cemetery photography was like a legitimate thing until I found your work. I began with my iPhone, and then your work convinced me to get my new, big boy Canon camera this year. So, Mary, I already know I'm going to love your answer, but why cemetery photography? And were you always fascinated by cemeteries?
That's a hard question. Why? I've often wondered that myself. Why cemetery photography? It just happens to be something I've been drawn to since I was a child, actually. There was a cemetery where I grew up, and we used to play in it. I was about 8 years old, and it was an old cemetery that they had started to move all the people that were buried out of it into another cemetery to make it into a public park. Mm-hmm. And so it was a large green space, and all of us kids in the neighborhood used to go there and play. And I used to get really interested in reading the stones, and we used to bring spoons and try to dig them up and things like that. But we used to play there. We used to play kick the can there at night and everything. So I had no real fear of the places like most kids have, I think, because of that. And I was just really interested in the whole, who were these people and why was the language so different on the stones? And so my interest started probably around 7 or 8 years old in cemeteries. And when I was about 15, I got my first camera, my first single lens reflex, 35 millimeter camera. And it just seemed like a natural place for me to start. I needed a subject or two. Mm-hmm. So I ended up at, a few of my favorite places shooting cemeteries. And it always just seemed to work. It seemed natural. And it was peaceful. And it was like walking through parks. And, it was just calming to me. So I guess, it was just a natural progression from youth.
Yeah, I've always told people they were very much like a park for me when I was growing up, and I have a grandma that even, packed a picnic lunch for me sometimes to hang out in the park. It was just, or in the cemetery, and it was just, normal to me. It was a cool experience.
Yeah, I've always, yeah, and I never had that fear that you're supposed to have, of these places, where that's where all the spooky things are. But I always just felt really calm there.
So, as far as the photography, who was your inspiration? Is there someone who inspired you to go
Oh,
kind of take the photography route?
gosh, I don't know. Um, I was born an artist, let's say. So I started out with more of the drawing and painting route of things
Mm-hmm.
and really didn't get into photography maybe until I was about 11. And, I had like a 110 camera, if anyone knows what that is even, and then like a disc camera and, all the little cameras and I was fascinated with those. And then I begged my parents when I was 15 to get me a real camera. And it just kind of took off from there. And I took photography classes along with my art classes. And I did that all the way through college. And I just got out there and just took photos. And I don't think I was inspired by anyone until I was a little bit older. And Imogen Cunningham is one of my favorites. She's a photographer who did a lot of black and whites. And she was, early in the I think the 1910s, 1920s. She was a buddy of Ansel Adams, just a really unique female photographer. But I don't think she really had an impact on me until much later.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I could say there was somebody that was really my inspiration. But I think just getting out there and doing it was my inspiration.
Yeah, well, that's okay. That's okay. Everybody needs to kind of be their own inspiration too.
Yeah.
Now, if anyone is listening right now and they have not seen Mary's Historic Cemeteries page on Facebook, what I want them to do is press pause and open up the page, and before you listen to the rest of the podcast, you have to see her photos, I think, before you even listen to her speak, because her work is amazing. Is it true that the Historic Cemeteries page on Facebook was started almost by accident or as an experiment, and you never really expected it to be loved and followed by so many people?
Absolutely. Yeah. I am a web developer by day, so I needed to figure out how Facebook pages work from the administrative side. So I created a page and I had no idea what I was going to create a page about. I just randomly picked cemetery photos because I happened to have a lot of them. So I literally came up with the name in about maybe 30 seconds because I was like, okay, these are historic cemeteries. I'll call it that. So really within about 10 minutes, the page was launched. I had photos uploaded, and then like shortly thereafter, people found me somehow and started following me. And I wasn't even really taking it seriously at first. It was just an experiment.
Wow, and it was 2010 that you started this, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so how long
September of
did it?
2000.
So it didn't take very long for it to really explode, to turn into what it is now.
Not really, I guess. It was crazy because, it was just me out there having fun, and then all of a sudden I had 50 followers, and I was like, who are these people? Looking at my cemetery photos, who likes this stuff besides me? I didn't think there was anyone else in the world that liked cemetery photos. I never expected any of this. And it's slowly picked up, and then here in the last year, I've probably gained 4 or 5 thousand followers in a year. So it's had a gradual build, but it's been more exponential over the recent years.
Is there a way for you to judge how many people you think are photographers that are following you on that page?
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
I'm sure you probably hear
I
from
know
some
a
of
lot
them.
of the people are. Yes, we communicate a lot. There's a lot of people that do take photos, and the nice thing is about the page, a lot of people have said to me that I've inspired them to go out and start taking photos because
Hmm.
they think their places should be recorded, and that thrills me because I really would love to see all these places recorded in some way. So I couldn't tell you a percentage, but there's probably a good 20%, 10%. I don't know. I don't know how many that is, but
Well, I can tell you, I was one of those people that when I went to, the cemetery, I was just there to take a picture, like, of the headstone, like, no artistry involved, just, here's the headstone, take a picture of it. And then all of a sudden, you, like, opened up this whole new world of, oh my gosh, it could really be, beautiful, and can be, something that people enjoy looking at instead of just, sitting in a folder on my desktop. on the
Yeah,
computer.
yeah. And I went through that phase myself because I did a lot of genealogical research.
Hmm.
And so in my 20s and 30s, I was out just doing that, just taking photos, just to record, just
Hmm.
to say, okay, I've got the name, I've got the date, that's enough. And then, once I started the page, that's when it really, I connected my art and my photos and my cemeteries. I mean, I took cemetery photos that were artistic when I was younger, but I never intended to share them. And then
Yeah.
that kind of fell off, real life took over and had to do other things that weren't as fun. Um, so then once historic cemeteries started to really get rolling, I realized that I could use my art background and make these things more beautiful and show people, beautiful places rather than, places that they just disregard. So,
And you shared with me a document, before, and in that document you mentioned that a lot of people don't even, realize that they don't think about the places, so they don't realize that they're there, to, enjoy as a place that has beauty.
right. I think that most people think, oh yeah, cemetery, whatever. They don't realize that there's Italian sculptors that have, created these masterpieces in some of them. We've all heard of Bonaventure and things like that. People may have heard of the big touristy ones,
Hmm.
um, which are beautiful, but they're all over, these places and this workmanship and this history. They're like museums out there just waiting for somebody to come through them.
True. And I love when you just, like sometimes when I'm traveling or something, or going from one city to another, and I'll find one and you just stop. I have to stop. And sometimes
Oh
there's
yeah.
really just these gems in the middle of nowhere that I'm like, wow, do the residents here even know this is here? You know?
Yeah. And it's really funny about that too. I've had many road trips where I've just found something and somebody will be like driving past or walking through and they'll like shout to me, "Hey, did you know if you look over in that corner, they tell me where to look." And then they give me history, from their car windows and stuff like that. I love it. It's so much fun.
Well, that's cool. So there are people that are around that, are aware and are kind of keeping track of things in the cemetery.
Yeah, they give me funny looks at first, usually like, what is that person doing? And then they realize that, I'm taking photos, I think, and there are a few, yeah, that have come out and said, there's a lot of history here. So they do know, and a lot of communities, I think, are proud of them. They just don't know how to take care of them,
Hmm.
unfortunately, or don't have the resources.
Right. So a lot of your most recent work has been in the area of infrared photography.
Uh-huh.
Both paranormal investigators and folks who are, fascinated by paranormal television are familiar with infrared, or IR, I guess sometimes it's referred to
Hmm.
as it pertains to night vision video cameras for the most part. As a paranormal investigator, I would use IR to help me, take advantage of seeing in the dark. It appears most of your amazing IR photography is taken during the day. Are we talking about the same technology here?
It's not quite the same, no. With infrared, like digital infrared that I shoot, basically, there's a little filter inside the camera that it's
Hmm.
removed, and then a new filter is put into blocks at a certain wavelength of light. So, and there's varying wavelengths you can choose to have
Hmm.
that filter set at. I guess that's the right way to say this. There's different like ranges of nanometers that you can choose from, and they all will give you a different version of infrared. Um, I think I could shoot at night, but it's probably not going to be the same kind of thing that you would get.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not quite sure how the night vision ones work per se, um, because I haven't done that much with them. I know I had a video camera once that was capable, and you get the green and the black, and
Uh-huh.
this is different. This is different because it is a filter for that specific wavelength of invisible light.
And it seems a little difficult. I'm not a photography person as far as knowing what I'm talking about, but it seems a little difficult to explain. Where your photography is the first photography I've ever seen using this IR photography. Where did this come from? How did you get started in the IR part of the photography?
Oh, IR. Well, I have a friend who's a photographer in Mississippi and met him through cemetery groups. He was shooting cemeteries as well. And he was shooting infrared photography. His name is John Major. That's Majure. Very talented photographer. And we became close friends. And I said to him one day, I said, I want to try infrared. I need to do this. And he said, okay, well, I'll get you started. He wouldn't give me any of his secrets. But he did. He said, okay, start with this kind of camera, go this route, and then just play with it. You'll figure it out. And the minute I hit that button the first time, I fell in love. I was just sold. And, I got the camera, I started shooting infrared, and I never stopped. And that was, I think, in the beginning of 2011. Or no, 2012 maybe. I got it at the end of 2011. And so I've been doing that ever since and trying to adapt my own style and do my own thing with it.
It really transforms the picture completely, like into a completely different landscape sometimes.
It does. It's beautiful to me. And you learn to see things in a different way when you're shooting in infrared as well, because what you know about light and shadow and dark and color is completely washed away, basically, and you have to think in a whole new way. So it's great fun for me. I love it.
So can you walk us through, and I'm really interested in this part because I know what goes on in my brain, but can you walk us through what goes through your head as you enter, whether it's a new cemetery or your favorite cemetery? What are you looking for?
Ooh, that's a toughie. Usually when I go into a cemetery, I don't know, there's some sort of instinct that's grown in me over the years, where it's like, just even like if you're driving through a town, you're like, I bet there's a cemetery over there. It's like one of those things. You can just tell. So when I go into a cemetery, generally the first thing I kind of do is I just stand and I look around and, I kind of say a little secret phrase to myself that's, I say it to the cemetery. I say, show me what I need to find. And
that's cool.
Yeah, I do it every time. And, then I just start walking, and I don't know, it's just, I just let my instincts take me where I need to go. I don't research cemeteries before I go to them. I don't want to know what's there ahead of time. I don't read about the residents generally or find out who I'm supposed to look for because I just want to find it naturally and be surprised and, let it happen how it's supposed to happen. So I don't really prepare much, honestly. I just kind of go in and react to my environment.
So sometimes I feel like I have to cover every inch, like I have to, document as I go and walk in squares so that I don't miss anything. Do you kind of try to cover the whole cemetery, or do you just let your instincts kind of take you on a certain path?
I try to cover whole cemeteries. It depends on the size of the cemetery, but I am one of those people that can get so lost in my method that I get so distracted that I'm like, oh, over here, oh, over there. There is no method. It's just all madness and me running around with my camera going, oh, I got to get it to that corner. Oh, I've got to get to that corner. Pretty much I just try to cover as much ground as I can as fast as I can because I want to get it all.
Yeah. So how many hours are you likely to spend in a cemetery in a visit? Is this an embarrassing question?
Probably. Enough to make anyone who goes with me groan.
Oh, man.
Yeah, this is why I go by myself. Even a small cemetery, I can spend a good 2 to 3 hours in, and I mean small. A big one, same thing usually, because that's usually about all I have is about 2 to 3 hours, because a lot of the time I'm driving to get to these places, and I'll drive 6 hours to get to a place.
Oh, wow.
I have 2 hours to shoot, and then drive 6 hours home that same day. So I spend a lot of time on the road, or have in recent years, and so I've learned to work really quickly. But if I had my way, I could spend days shooting in the big ones.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I generally tend to visit them more than once, because I don't get everything. I have plenty that I haven't covered nearly enough ground in. But usually I would say my average is 2 to 3 hours.
I sometimes, if I've learned something new, I've only, done this for a couple of years, taking pictures in cemeteries. If I learn something new or feel like I'm getting better, or like when I got my new camera, I feel like I have to go to the same cemeteries again to take the same, same shots again and make them better. It drives me nuts. I'm like, you should find a new cemetery, but this one's so nice, I need to go back.
Yeah, I've done that so much. I mean, Sometimes I think I already took that shot, and I'll look and it's almost exactly the same. And I'm like, but it's new, you know? Yeah, I do the same thing. I revisit and I, different lighting can happen, different time
Mm-hmm.
of day, different time of year, different seasons. It can change the same vantage, the same, photo can look really different at different times.
Well, that's a perfect transition because my next question is, what season's your favorite? For me, it's autumn. So I would maybe guess that your favorite season would be autumn to take photos in a cemetery. Is it?
Whose isn't? Autumn is just wonderful for cemeteries, especially if you're in the north and you actually have, leaves that change. I'm here in
Oh,
Florida
yeah.
now, so I don't get much of that around here.
Mm-hmm.
I get a change in light, which I love. I love autumn light because it's low and it's soft. Um, if I can get up to the north where there's color, oh, it's just, it's stunning. It's beautiful with the sunlight and the light angles and then the color. There's just nothing like it. So, yeah, autumn.
Is there a magic hour that you like?
Mm.
It is I don't know. Sometimes sunset is when I like to take a lot of my pictures, but I struggle sometimes with the lower light in sunset. But then I get some really good shots that way. When's your favorite time?
Yeah, I like dusk. I really
Yeah,
do. It depends on the time of year a little bit too. I do like, now it's funny because there are certain cemeteries that I like in the morning because of the way the light comes through them
yeah.
and the direction they face and things like that. There's one in Fernandina Beach in Florida that I love in the morning, and I don't love it in the afternoon. When I normally would love most cemetery, light for shooting in cemeteries in later afternoon because the angle of light is a little different and you get a little bit more dramatic, shadows and lights and things like that. You have to be careful with that as well, but I would have to say dusk
Yeah.
most of the time.
I would have to agree though. I've gone to a cemetery sometimes and the headstones are facing the opposite direction of what I want them to face. And I'm like,
Right.
man, I guess I'll just take pictures of the backs of the headstones today.
Yeah, it can be problematic. And with me driving, a lot of times I end up at a cemetery at noon, which is like the worst time ever
Hmm.
to shoot. But you have to make do. You do what you can with the light that you have.
Well, this is probably a good time to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to take a look at some of the examples that Mary has. And those are going to be on the show notes. So you can take a look at those with us. And she can kind of explain maybe what she looks for. So we will be right back. Oh, look. We've got listener feedback. Yes, we do have feedback, listener feedback from last week's very first episode. And I just want to thank these people for the nice comments. I really, really appreciate it. Tammy says she loves it and can't wait for the next one. So I hope she's enjoying this week's episode. Debbie says, bravo, great job and very informative. Keep them coming. My Auntie Patty said, good job. I really enjoyed it. Vincent said, you both sounded like naturals. Keep it up. And, of course, the person with me last week was Marilyn Painter, so she sounds natural, too. A few people have even mentioned to me how very affected and kind of spooked they were by the story that Marilyn Painter told of the boy and him shaking everyone's hands. You'll have to check out that episode 1, if you missed that one. I also have to take this opportunity to kind of give my own shout out and thank you to Jim Harold of the Paranormal Podcast. You can find him at jimharold.com and jimharold.net. And, I haven't made it a secret that I've taken his podcast course and just finished that recently, and he really helped me out. But even before I took the course, I feel like I was a student of Jim Harold just from listening to nearly every one of his podcasts, going all the way back to 2005. So, I'm trying to do my own thing here, but, I love what Jim's done, and so that's kind of the school that I have come from. So thank you, Jim, and thank you, everybody, for your feedback. I appreciate it. If you like the Big Séance podcast, you might like what's going on over at my blog, bigseance.com. Check it out. I bring up so many nerdy things over there. From there, you can subscribe to the blog by clicking the follow button. You can like the Big Séance Facebook page and find me on Twitter. And of course, you can find links to this and future episodes of the Big Séance podcast. One of the nicest things that you could do to help me out is to share an episode of this podcast with all of your fellow paranerds. I would really appreciate that. Oh, and look for us soon on iTunes. Now, let's go back to, well, whatever nerdy topic we were discussing. So welcome back. Again, I'm here with Mary Homick. And what I want to do now is direct your attention, if you can see the show notes. Are we looking at infrared photography right here in this first one, Mary?
This is infrared, yes. Let's see. Well, this is in Richmond, Virginia, Hollywood Cemetery. As you can tell, it may not look it, but it's a very green, lush, ivy-filled area. Mm-hmm. Perfect for infrared. Infrared loves green.
Yeah.
Green becomes white, obviously, for the most part. And then I hand touch everything and tone it. And you'll see that there's a little blurring that I've done to give it sort of that miniature appearance, which generally is considered a tilt shift kind of filtering, which is another type of shooting or another type of lens, which I don't own, but I can fake it really well. So I'm not sure how to explain this other than it's just a pretty little path in Richmond, Virginia. It was taken in the middle of summer, I believe last year, and this is infrared, yeah.
I love how the sky kind of pokes out on the right-hand side on the top, and it's just gold. And I love how that gold pops out. Does everything in infrared, does the sky turn gold, or is it some other kind of artistic choice that you made?
Well, it depends on your camera. It depends on your filter that you've had put in your camera. Mine usually comes out either a brown or a pale yellow or, some range there within, based on the light that you have at the time and where you're shooting from. Generally, shooting from the shade into a lighted area is better. So I can't tell you that I did that here for sure, but it looks like I may have. So, and then what you're seeing here is a whole lot of like hand toning and hand touching that I do to the photo. It doesn't come straight out of the camera like this. I will get something that has a little bit, the whites that you see will be a little bit more blue toned, or have a little bit more cyan in them. The sky is probably not quite as vibrant. And you'll see like the stone on the right has a little bit more, it has like that root beer color. I make sure to tone, I change the hues of each like color channel to get the tones that I want. And so that's why you see some of the vibrant yellows and things of that nature. I just like those. It is kind of a natural color that comes out of the infrared, but I enhance that.
I love it. And I see that fence there. I'm kind of obsessed with, the iron fences and things in the cemetery, and the older and sometimes the more kind of run down they are, the better picture it takes. I love it.
Yeah, I love the accent that they get. There's somebody, I can't remember who, but some interior design thing that I read long ago that said, you have to have at least one black thing in a room to make it look good. I believe that about the photo too. So the black fence it's just this heavy element that creates interest and draws the eye, and in infrared it gets really dark and beautiful, and
yeah,
I like that too. It just has some drama,
It's like a winter photo on another planet is what it is. It's winter but not winter. I love it.
It is. It's supposed to be somewhat mystical, mythical. I want people to feel like it's a dreamy place. To me, they are dreamy places to me. So I want people to feel that, like they're walking into a dream.
Absolutely. So I know you're very because you told me you're very skeptical when it comes to the paranormal, and I told you that that was okay because, you know, I was probably more skeptical than you think maybe. It was very cool to see, recently you posted this beautiful photo of a little angel statue where some interesting circular aberrations is what you called them. They appeared, and I've got those on the show notes as well. Almost like ripples in a pond. In the air next to the statue that had many people crying, you know, ghosts, and saying that, you know, there was something paranormal about this photo. And I must admit, the photo had me stumped. I was going to guess something completely different that caused the circles, but you came back on later and, you know, explained what caused the circles. I love that you talked through your logical investigation of what actually created it. So we have a few things in common, some kind of analytical things in common there. I tend to do the same thing with EVP and other claims in the paranormal, to the point where people sometimes get annoyed with me. People so badly want things to be a ghost sometimes. Did you notice the kind of the circular markings there before you posted it, or how did that kind of happen? I love the photo. It just is a photo anyway.
Well, it's really funny because, you know, I had gone to Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic and visited this beautiful old cemetery, really interesting place. And I was shooting outside the fence perimeter, and then I went inside and shot inside. So I had photos, you know, from all vantage points. And I came across this photo, not really knowing when in this, you know, time frame when I had shot this particular photo. I came across this photo. It had all these weird ripples and circles and patterns in it that seemed to make no sense. I had never seen anything like it. And I stared at it and I was like, okay, what is this? You know, because the first thing I'm going to do is be like, okay, I'm going crazy because this doesn't really exist. So I posted this on my personal Facebook before I even posted it on the page, just to get people's reaction, to see what everybody else thought. And I hadn't figured it out yet. And sure enough, everybody was saying, ghost, just face it, Mary, it's a ghost. It's ghosts. You're just going to have to live it. You're going to have to accept it sooner or later. And I just knew in my heart of hearts that there was something else going on. I just looked at it and looked at it, and I was like, no, there has to, it's just too uniform. It's too something, you know. And so then I decided to look through all the photos that were taken around the same time. And I came across a couple in that same range of, you know, shots that were, and I realized that this was outside the fence. So I was shooting inside the cemetery from outside an iron fence that had ornate scroll work. And it turns out that these ripples and these circular patterns are actually the fence. It's the blurry edges that my lens picked up in really, really close proximity to the fence. You know, it's the fence. And so once I figured that out, then I felt comfortable posting it on historic cemeteries and just letting people play with it. You know, just trying to say like, okay, you know, go ahead and say what you're going to, and then I'm going to tell you what it really is.
I love that you had that little game for us all to play. That was awesome.
It's fun. You know, I like people to have fun with this as well. So
I had guessed a spider web. That's what I was thinking. I was like, that is so a spider web. How many people said it was a spider web?
There were people that thought it was a spider web. People thought it was water droplets or moisture on the lens, fingerprints, which I could understand, you know, but that'd be really weird in focus fingerprint. But yeah, it was none of the above. And even when I told people what it was, they still didn't believe me. So.
No, you're wrong. No, it's an orb. It's a ghost.
No, it's a iron fence post. I'm sorry.
So is this one of the only time something like this has happened that stumped you?
No, there's one other photo that still stumps me to this day, and I don't even like to look at it.
Oh boy.
It's I couldn't start to tell you where it is at this moment, but it was taken in North Carolina. I think it's historic Oakwood there. It's Raleigh, North Carolina. And there's this mausoleum, and I'm standing in the glass taking a picture. You can see my reflection, but sure enough, it looks like there's a whole bunch of people around me in it, like faces.
In the reflection of the glass? In
the reflection of the glass, and then in the grounds behind me too. There's some crazy things. in it. And so I'm sure that someday I'll figure out how to explain that one away too, but
Hmm.
for now I haven't.
Well, I think that would creep a great many people out if they saw something like that.
Yeah, I posted it probably maybe 2 years ago, and I think everybody was starting to see these things, and I showed it to a couple friends, and they were like, "Ooh, that's really strange." Yes. So that's my other odd one, and otherwise I refuse to accept it. So,
Well, you want the cemetery to continue to be your happy place.
exactly. I don't really need people watching me over my shoulder.
So, and we can edit this out if you didn't, but did you have any of the photography that you picked out that you wanted to discuss today?
Um, I have so many photos.
Hmm.
It was hard for me, but the one photo that I think strikes a chord with me is the one that I actually put on the cover of my book. It's
Oh, yes,
my
yes.
hand in the hand of the statue that I
Hmm.
found. It was really interesting. That was in Richmond, Hollywood Cemetery as well. And I just kind of saw this angel who is a little bit, she's a little bit gothic. She, I'm not sure what to call it. It's a kind of a very gothic and very not real friendly angel looking kind of thing. It doesn't look like a serene, beautiful angel. It's kind of this darker angel.
Hmm.
It's hard to explain. But as I walked up to it and I was standing looking closely at it, I put my hand up next to it and I was amazed that its hand and my hand were almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
And so I took this picture of our hands and it just struck such a chord with me, um, because it was so, I don't know, it just spoke to me. It was like shaking hands with my co-partners and all this, it was hard to explain. It was a very meaningful photo to me.
It's almost like it's a moment that was supposed to happen, you know?
Yeah, it really was. And it's like, to me, it's kind of like this life mirrored with death kind of thing. It's like
Hmm.
me being alive and this, representative of, somebody who'd passed. And we're the same,
Hmm.
there's something, I don't quite know how to put it into words, but it's a very, very poignant photo to me personally. It means something to me. So that was the one, that I thought of out of all my photos. And this, I think, why I put it on the cover of the book, because it spoke to my relationship to these places.
Right.
Because I do feel, I wrote somewhere in my book that, and I wrote this long ago in a blog, that when I'm in these places, I feel like, my hand is being held half the time. Like, and somebody's walking me to where I need to see
Hmm.
what I need to see. I feel like somebody's holding my hand along the way, and you know, that it meant something to me. So that was the one photo that stood out in my mind. Do you know which photo I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm looking right at it now. I love it, and I'm thinking back to also something else you mentioned in the document that you shared with me, that sometimes people in your life don't necessarily understand your passion for this, and how it's hard to sometimes explain it. And to me, just showing them this photo you would think would be enough. I mean, this is awesome.
No, it's not enough generally.
Wow.
I think most people, they have preconceived ideas and notions of cemeteries and of people who roam around cemeteries. They think we're all, dressed in black and pretending to drink blood and, things,
Oh
which I
no,
do.
one of those.
I do wear a lot of black, but it's not because I'm, morbid or anything. They think there's some sort of, morbid fascination with death or something, when it's actually, I'm interested in the art and the art history of these places, and, preserving them, because
Right.
from an anthropological, vantage, these are important places. They tell us what we were before, and, they're ritual and they meant something to somebody at some point. They should still mean something. They're resources for us to learn from.
So go in more into this book. How did this book, come about, and how can we find it?
Oh, the book. I hesitated in making a book for quite a long time. I kept having people say, "So, when are you making a book? You should make a book. When are you making a book?" And after about a year of this, I finally said, "Okay, I'll make a book." So, I mean, I did it really, and in the beginning, I told myself that once I got 10,000 followers on Facebook, then I would make a book. But I decided to do it in advance of that because I had so many requests for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to write too much because I like my photos to speak for me.
Mm-hmm.
I do have things to say and I do have stories to tell, but I didn't want to work on that in this book. I wanted just to show people what I see and pick out a few select ideas and sets of photos that I have in my mind. So
Mm-hmm.
I have a section on trees and nature because trees in old cemeteries to me are a very important part of the scenery. I feel like they're the protectors almost.
Yeah.
When they're not falling down and landing on the stones, they're the
Mm-hmm.
protectors. And then like just the effigies and things of that nature. There are so many ways to look at the way these stones were created, and I tried to do that. I tried to show sample sets of that in my book, just to give people an idea. And I tried to make it affordable as well. These books can be very expensive to produce.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's 30 pages and it's almost all photos. I tried to jam it with photos as much as I could. And it's on Amazon right now. So you can just look me up and you'll find it.
Yeah, and we'll put that link in the show notes for sure. Any future projects that you have, going on?
Oh my, there's always something. I've actually toned it down a bit, but I was going a little crazy with too many projects at once.
Mm-hmm.
I do intend to do another book in the future, and it will be primarily an infrared book, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't quite determined when or how I want to do this, or what the theme will be. I thought about doing just Paris in infrared.
Yeah.
Or my historic cemeteries abroad, like other countries that I've been to, because a lot of what I've done has been here in the States, and I'm starting to venture out a bit more and try to get a little bit more around the world. I still think there's tons to see in this country, though, that's overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to go to the big, grandiose cemeteries, and I don't necessarily know that they have the greatest. I like the stories of the small ones and the forgotten ones.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have to figure out that next theme, but there probably will be another book. Yeah. I'm always coming up with ideas. Who knows?
Well, if there is, I certainly look forward to it.
Well, thank you.
Well, Mary, I truly hope that your passion continues to inspire others and encourages people with, to view their local cemetery in a different light. And if nothing else, you are certainly making, us cemetery nerds happy by the absolute beauty that you put out there and share with the world. You're a big inspiration for me, so thank you.
Well, thank you.
And I'm really honored that you did my second podcast.
I'm honored too. This has been fun.
Well, good. I'm excited to go back and hear it. So thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you.
For show notes, including links to anything we may have mentioned in this episode, visit bigseancepodcast.com. And very soon, you'll be able to find us and subscribe on iTunes. Do you have any comments or thoughts? Please contact me at patrick@bigseance.com. I could decide to include them in a future show. Don't forget to visit my blog, bigseance.com. Thank you so much for listening and reading. Unfortunately, it's time to blow the candles out, but we'll see you and light them again next time.